Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my Austrian pine. This tree was last repotted 3 years ago, and it's kind of been growing crooked in the pot. If we look at it from the side view here, you can see it's tilting towards the front. And I think it's because there's roots growing on this side of the tree and it's kind of pushing it over in the pot. So I'll have to correct that. It's got lots of new buds all over, all kinds of back budding on the branches here. So that's good. It looks like it's in good health. And it's getting very, very dense up top, which is blocking out light to these lower branches. And the lower branches, you can see they're, a little weaker. They're not as full with foliage as the top here. So I'm going to have to thin the top to let more light down to these lower branches. Do a bit of pruning. I've got, some great big buds on some of the branches. So I'll have to remove some of those tip buds and let some of the smaller back buds develop. Kind of equalize out, the vigor of the buds too. I'll start today by getting the tree out of the pot here in the bonsai zone. Here's a look at the side view of the tree. So this is the front of the tree looking in here. And you can see how it's tilted over, probably from root growth. So let's pull the tree out of the pot and we'll have a look at the roots. This will be quite exciting, seeing the root development, how it's grown in 3 years. So here I go, I'm going to take the tree out of the pot. Lift out quite easily. And let's have a look at the roots. So, starting on the bottom, I can see quite a dense mat of roots. Yeah, I would say most of the roots are at the bottom of the pot. I'll try and remove the drainage screens here. There's one. There's the other. So I'll probably end up cutting this mat of roots off the bottom. It looks like they've wrapped around multiple times around the base of the pot. So they're too long. I won't be using those long roots anyway. We'll be pruning them back shorter. So I'll try and get them untangled first. And now I'll get out the root rake and start combing out the roots. I'll save the moss from the top. Even though it's getting quite thick, you can see how thick and puffy it is. So that would need pruning down to get it to a thin layer. But I'll save it all. It's nice green moss and can be reused. I'll take you through the history of this tree. I've started making videos 6 years ago, so we'll start from 6 years ago up to the present, and I'll give you a quick recap on the development of this tree. Hi, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. Today we're looking at this Austrian pine. I've had this tree for about probably 18 years. Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. Today we're revisiting my Austrian pine. Today we're going to repot my Austrian pine. It's been in this pot for 3 years. Okay, I think we're getting there. We're getting close anyway to having our roots nice and combed out. So here's a close-up of the tree in the pot. Got lots of room for roots. We're a little bunched up over on this side. We could maybe do a little trimming there. I like our nice flare at the root base. It's looking really good, I think. Next up is my Austrian pine. This tree has good balance between the vigor on the lower branches and the vigor on the upper branches. The candle size of the new growth is quite equal throughout the tree. The tree has changed quite a bit in the last few years. And it's done very well. I'm happy with the progress of it. This tree was started from nursery stock. I bought a small Austrian pine from the nursery and cut it down in height and grew it in the front garden for about 10 years. And then, you know, put it in a training pot and just grew it as a bonsai from then on. So I've probably had it over 20 years now. So I'm starting to break out the surface roots, just gently combing from the center of the tree outwards. There's a lot of sand on top where I've done landscaping. Smells nice. Has a nice forest smell to this planting. I'm seeing a nice density of roots in the root mass here. I've seen a lot of pines where the potting's been left for like 10 years and there's a brick of roots underneath the tree that's just solid, and you know, all you can do is kind of saw around the edges of the root ball and repot it that way. You never really improve the root structure, and yeah, it's just too dense to work on. So I prefer to, you know, repot a little more often. I think 3 years for a pine is really good. I mean, you could leave it longer, but it's going to make it harder to rake the roots out when you do go to repot. So, and you know, the goal for me is to improve the root system with each repotting. I'm not just repotting for the sake of repotting to, you know, fit the tree in a new pot or to give some fresh soil around the roots. I'm trying to improve the root structure and the appearance of the roots, and, you know, create long-term health for the tree. So there's not roots wrapping around the trunk, and, you know, the roots aren't jammed in there so you can't water it. Yeah, I'm seeing really good roots in here. All kinds of nice fine roots, good radial roots. I'm very happy with what I see so far. So I'll rotate the tree around and just work on all sides of the root mass at the same time. I remember I was happy with the roots last time I repotted this too. I got some nice, you know, radial roots happening and creating a nice flare at the base of the trunk. Yeah. So I'm looking forward, after this repotting, you know, it'll develop these roots even more and kind of take it to the next level. There's a root at the back here that's always kind of stuck up, and I may be able to remove that. I'm not sure. I want to get, you know, the rest of the roots in the area strong enough so that someday I can remove that. It is at the back, so it's not really critical, but there's 2 roots in that area that cross like this, and I don't like crossing roots, especially major surface roots. So I'm hoping to be able to correct that today. At least maybe take one of them off. I'm going to flip the tree over now and start working on the bottom. Starting again in the center and raking towards the edges. Getting all these roots untangled. When you're working on the bottom of the roots, it's important to watch your branches that you don't bang them against the bench and break branches. So it's a good idea to put the branches of the tree off the end of the bench and work on the bottom like this. The root mass in this tree is quite shallow, so it could go in a shallow pot, but I'm keeping it in a traditional bonsai pot. But maybe someday I'll try it in a shallow pot, who knows. I've raked down to the base of the tree. I can hit the wood down there. So I think I've got most of the soil raked out from the bottom. So I'll clean up my soil here, flip it back over, and we'll comb out the roots from the top. The tree is flipped back over, so now I can comb out the roots. There's my other drainage screen. Knew I'd find it. And this is where you'll see exactly how long some of these roots have grown as I comb them out. Yeah, the roots are looking really good, nice and healthy. You can see, even though this is a pine tree, you can see how nice and flat and radial the root base is. So I use the same principles on my pines as I do on my deciduous trees and my tropical trees. That way you get that nice trunk flare at the base of the tree, and you get the nice surface roots, which makes it look really stable in the soil and gives it a nice miniature appearance. So I think I've got all the roots pretty well raked out. So the next step will be to wash the roots. I know there's a lot of people that say you should never wash the roots on a pine tree because there's mycorrhiza fungi attached to the roots that convert organic matter into a form the tree can use. And that's true if the tree's growing in poor soil. The tree will use up to 20% of its energy feeding that fungi. They live in symbiosis, and in exchange the fungi feeds the tree. So if you have a well-fed tree in good soil, there's no need for mycorrhiza fungi. The tree will do fine without it if you're using a chemical fertilizer, which is the way I feed the trees. So I'm going to wash the roots and then we'll start the root pruning. Okay, here I go. I'll wash the roots. Just like a washing machine. It won't get all the soil off, but it gets most of it off. Enough to see the roots and, you know, so you can see them clearly for pruning. Okay, back to the bench. I've got the tree back on the bench now, so I'll rake out the roots again. I can see it doesn't sit very flat. There is a root that's grown down here, this one here, that's kind of pushing the tree forward. So that's what's causing it to tilt in the pot, I think. That root is growing really well. So we'll have to fix that. That's those two crossing roots. I'm wondering if I can straighten them out, or if it's too old a root to do so. I'm going to try and untangle them, get all the roots from each root separated. Like that. So I've got this root separated, and then this one, there's a couple of roots in there. There's that one, and there's another little one underneath here. So I'm going to try and cross them, and you know, if they break, well, they break, but it would really be nice if I could get these roots sorted out. There. They didn't break, and that is much, much better. You know, not perfect, but not bad. They're at least side by side now. Maybe with the next repotting, I can sort those out even further. Just trying to see if I can get them even better. Like that. Yeah, that's better. At least they're not doing that crossing thing which just drives me crazy. At least they're kind of side by side now. So that's a step forward with the root base that I'm quite pleased with. Even though it's at the back and probably no one will ever notice it, but I will. There's some roots in here that have formed, but they're not radial, so I'm going to try and get those sorted out. I don't know where that root goes. Down in here somewhere. Roots can get quickly tangled up. Once they get tangled, it's really hard to get them sorted out again. There we go. So now I can get these roots arranged more in a radial pattern like that. That'll help this space fill in that void eventually with roots. Always got to look towards the future of the tree. So that's looking good. I'm going around the roots now, just seeing what else I can sort out. There is a root here that goes down into the root base. I'm going to try and get that pulled up to make a nice surface root like that. There's a few other crisscrossed roots right at the front here that I'm going to try and sort out. And actually it goes back on itself into the root ball. So I'm going to try and pull that out. Ah, that didn't work. Just broke off. It was wedged in between two roots here. So that's okay. It's better to have it broken off than have it go in between roots, because it'll just get worse in future. So I'll prune that part of the root off. Like that. There's some nice surface roots underneath it there, growing really well. And I may be able to lower this root down a bit more. It was always a little high out of the ground. There's a root growing out between some roots here. I've got to take that off. It doesn't look very good. Like that. Sometimes if you take a root off, you have nicer roots growing below it that you can show. Not always, but it's nice when you do. Okay, I think that's about all I can do to the root base as far as sorting it all out for now. So now I'll do a trim to the roots. I'll start to prune the roots now, so trimming off these really long ones, just cutting it back, cutting them back. And this is just a rough trim for now, and then I'll see how the tree fits in the pot and do some further pruning then. Okay, so here's the pot, and I've got to get the front of the tree facing me, which is about here. So you can see I have a lot of roots that are hanging over the pot that do need trimming. So I think these are the roots. They grew down inside the pot here, vertical, and pushed the tree forward. Okay, so I'll do a little pruning. Getting these reduced back to there. These reduced back to here. And I've got to take some off the front here too. You can see how they've grown down into the pot, deep into the pot, which is okay. They've got to grow into that space. I've got a few roots underneath I could prune off, going straight down. Don't need those. Want the root mass flat on the bottom. Now, let's see how it's fitting in the pot. It's getting there. I might have to reduce those ones at the back a little more, like that. Let's see. So the back's fitting in quite nicely, but the front needs a little more pruning. I think I gotta there's a thick root here I gotta cut back. Maybe this one too, like that. Yeah, that gives me room to get it in the pot now. Just a little more trimming to the front here. Give those roots a little room to grow in the pot. A little bit off the side to give those a little room too. And I think that's looking pretty good. Yeah, that fits nicely in the pot now. The baby duck and her mother are getting some shade underneath the bonsai bench here. He was kind of abandoned as a little duckling by his duck parents. So we slipped him underneath the silky chicken here, and she's raised him, and now the duck's almost the same size as the mama. Certainly weigh about the same. Yeah. And he's about a month old now, I think, or she. See you later, guys. I've got my pot all cleaned up and a drainage screen in the bottom, so it's ready for planting. I'll add a layer of soil in the bottom, and this will get the tree up to the right height in the pot. You just kind of got to guess at this. I pile it up and then I'll get the tree. And I'll be seeing the front, so you'll be seeing the back of the tree. And I'll get it settled down in the pot here. And I've got to make sure all my angles are correct. The tree is nice and vertical from all angles. There's looking pretty good. It does have a very slight tilt towards the front view, but that's good. That always looks good in a planting. You don't want your tree leaning away from you. That looks uninviting. So I will put a little more soil under the front here. That's looking pretty good there. The tree's staying nice and balanced in the pot. A little more soil under this side. Yeah, that's looking quite nice. So there's the front view. Side view looks good. It's nice and vertical. Slight lean to the front, not much. Position in the pot looks good. I'll rake out the surface roots now, and then I can start filling in the soil. Okay, I'll show you a close-up of the root base. We'll spin it around. All right, I'll spin the tree around. So there's the back. Those are the two roots. They were crossed, so I kind of put them side by side. There's some nice radial roots developing in here. There's my nice front surface roots. They're looking pretty good too. I'll fill the soil in just a little bit at a time and work it in. So just a little bit like that. And I'll work it into the roots. And a little more soil now. And get that worked in. Okay. I can tell the roots haven't become active on this tree yet because there's no white root tips growing in the soil. So that means it's a good time to repot. When the buds are active like that, the candles are starting to elongate now, but there's no root activity yet. So a good time to repot a pine. So I'm just going to double check my height of the tree in the pot. That's looking quite nice. Again, ideally this soil should be dry, but I did have it in my greenhouse, but there was a hole in the roof that was dripping down onto my soil bin. The rest of the greenhouse is totally dry, but there's just this one spot that I put the soil bin in, and it dripped down and wet all my soil, so that was just too bad. However, we can work it in while it's wet here too. You just got to be a little more careful. It's time now to give the tree a watering. That'll help settle the soil in around the roots. So here I go. Okay, that should do it. Repotting is done. I'll spin the tree around. So that's the back of the tree. There's the front. Yeah, so I think it's looking the best it can. I'll leave the tree on the bench here. It doesn't get full sun all day. It maybe gets 3 to 4 hours of sun a day. So that'll be good until the tree recovers. I'll place some stones on the surface of the soil to hold the tree in place until the roots grow and fill the pot. Just like that. So nothing will blow it over. That completes the work to my Austrian pine for today. I'll keep my fingers crossed and hope it recovers well. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.